What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the interweb? So we're going to be trying a bunch of different filming locations, see where it looks best, and that kind of thing. So we're trying this location today. So today we're talking about Persona 5 R and how it's kind of been debunked at this point that it's a Nintendo Switch port, but it appears to be a remake. And a remake to Persona 5 makes a ton of sense. If those of you that don't know or don't really follow the Sega Atlas chain of command, late in the PlayStation 3 era, Persona and Yakuza were being developed, but Sega did not want to keep them on PlayStation 3, so instead of making a complete remake, they just went ahead and did their little skip to my Lou and just ported the PlayStation 3 make directly to the PlayStation 4, which thus made the games suffer. Persona 5 looks very dated. It's a fun game, it looks great, but it still looks like a PlayStation 3 game. Yakuza 0 and Yakuza Kiwami, both fun games. They look okay, but they're very much still PlayStation 3 games. They are using the old engine. Yakuza 6 was the first Yakuza game that was developed specifically for the PlayStation 4, although it's currently being remade for the PC to look even better and actually play at 60 frames per second. It's going to be a while before we actually see that, but that was what a PlayStation 4 game looks like from Sega Atlas. So this is kind of what I'm starting to think about Persona 5R. Persona 5R looks like it has definitely picked up the latest Dragon engine. It may even be running Unreal. I wouldn't be surprised because they are adopting Unreal for the Shin Megami Tensei series, which are still exclusive to Nintendo Switch, which we'll talk about that in a second. So having Shin Megami Tensei and Unreal Engine means maybe Persona 5 R, which I'm going to go ahead and assume is Persona 5 Remake. Persona 5 Racing doesn't make much sense, but if it is Persona 5 Racing, then I mean, that's fine. I'll play it. It'll be fun. I enjoy those time racing games, but it's going to be kind of weird to say Persona 5 R because at this point, Persona has reached Sonic level of popularity if they're going to have Persona 5 R. I don't know why they would call it Persona 5 R and not just Persona R, because that would make a whole lot more sense, but it's more than likely that Persona 5 R is Persona 5 Remake. As we saw in the trailer, the game is looking very, very good. So for the game originally being developed for a PlayStation 3 exclusivity, and now just being ported over to PlayStation 5, it makes very much sense, or PlayStation 4 I mean, it makes very much sense for Persona to be making its remake on the PlayStation 4 as well. This would not be the first time we have seen a game do this, it would just be the first time we've seen a game do this like this close back to back. It wasn't unusual back last gen to see games that came out in 2005 and 2006 being remade in 2012, 2013, just because of how technology changed, standards changed. People weren't playing games in 720 anymore. They were playing them in 900p. If you're playing on Xbox 360, but if you're playing on PlayStation 3, I think the max output that thing had for most games was like 840. It could handle up to 1080p, but no game developer ever took full 1080p. It was always like 840 at most, which kind of sucked, but you can understand it for, you know, the hardware and the televisions that were out at the time. People weren't really adopting 1080p all that much, so having it at around 720 made a ton of sense. Persona 5 and Yakuza 0 and Yakuza Kiwami on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 Pro all have a maximum resolution of 900p 30 FPS. So with this remake, it looks like it's going to hit 1080p, which is kind of the best resolution that PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 Pro can obtain without checkerboarding. So that's exciting. But with that being said, we still have P5S.jp and I believe P5A.jp. So what does that mean? Oh, and P5M.jp. I think Persona is going to take a whole round. I think it's going to be everywhere by the end of next year, or by the end of this year at this point. I believe Persona 5M stands for Persona 5 Mobile. Persona 5S, definitely Persona 5 Switch. I don't know what else it would be, but Persona 5 Switch does make a whole lot of sense because if they make Persona 5 Switch, then that means Persona is finally going to sell extremely well. I don't know if you've noticed this, but even though PlayStation has a huge install base, games sell horribly on the PlayStation. Every game, no matter what it is, as long as it's like a first party or a third party game on Switch, ends up selling 8+ million copies. But on PlayStation, unless it's a first party PlayStation Studio or it's something like Red Dead or Call of Duty, it's lucky to hit 500,000 copies sold. Sometimes there'll be a diamond in the rough that hits 1 million, but it's very rare, and you wouldn't think that given PlayStation's huge install base. But for whatever reason, PlayStation fans that only play games on PlayStation, they don't like video games, and that's kind of weird to think about. I believe most people that buy a PlayStation are buying it for the same reason they bought a PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3. Cheap Blu-ray player, cheap DVD player. That is honestly probably the only reason people buy it, and cheap media player. Although almost everybody has a smart TV now, it is 100 times easier just to use a, bona fide home console for your streaming needs. A lot of people still use the Nintendo Wii. Once those servers, everything gets wiped, I believe everybody from that era will probably be adopting the PlayStation 4 as well, because it already has access to pretty much every form of streaming you would ever want. Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Crunchyroll, Funimation if you're a pleb, and all this other things. So I do see the PlayStation 4 hitting a big stock in sales in 2019. But with that being said as well, the games are still not going to sell very well. So once it gets ported over to the Nintendo Switch and mobile, I believe Persona 5 is going to easily hit at 12 million copies sold. Because Persona, even though it's popular, it's still sold best in Asian markets. And Asia since then has completely gone mobile. Everybody plays games on their phones or Nintendo Switch. So once Persona gets moved to Nintendo Switch and mobile, that's where all the sales are going to finally happen. I'm not saying that that's what Persona 5S and Persona 5M means. That's just what I believe based on what I've seen so far. I could be completely wrong. I was wrong the other day about Persona 5R being for the Nintendo Switch, but with the things we still have left, there is still hope that there could be a Nintendo Switch out there for this game. But that's just my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments down below. And with that being said, try not to die, and I'll see you in the next video.